Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Delmico Cunningham, better known as Dr. Media. So welcome back all of my digital mutants. I know that my last tutorial was for OpenSense and Pi-hole, but this one's going to get back to the digital content creation stuff that I love to do here on the channel. So in this video, I wanted to talk about texturing. So unwrapping and texturing is something that a lot of people in 3D do not like to do. So what I've done here is I have a project that I built here inside of Silo. So if you're familiar with Silo, Silo is a subdivisional polygonal modeling program. So you do have subdivisions in here, and it's really polygonal modeling with subdivision ability to subdivide your model. So what's really cool is it's a pretty slimmed down and trim package to model with. So that's why I like working inside of Silo. So in here, this weekend I was watching Edge of Tomorrow, which is also Live, Die, Repeat. And I was looking at the main character's sword and I was like, that sword's pretty kick butt. I think I'm gonna model that in 3D. So in the movie, if you have not seen it, the main heroine, she crafts a sword out of a propeller blade. So that's what this sword is. So this is the propeller blade sword. So I've modeled the sword here inside of Silo. I've subdivided some things that I wanted to have a little bit more smoothness to them, and trying to keep my geometry pretty simple, just for not only for the model itself, but because of the UVing process, right? I wanted the UVs to be pretty simple to be able to handle. So I've got the side of my blades here, and then this is the bottom section where the sharpened edge would be at. I separated that in my UVs so that I can do a different texture on just that area and be able to easily get a nice clean line as I do that. So that's why I did that. So I've labeled this, I've given everything a basic shader here inside of Silo, labeled all those shaders and exported this out. And what I'm going to use to texture this is going to be another program that I really love, which is Substance Designer. Now I know a lot of people use Substance Painter. A lot of the filters that you use inside of Substance Painter actually come out of Substance Designer. So Substance Designer, if you've not seen me use it before here on the channel, it is a procedural shader creation network basically. And I think here recently, Substance Designer, the company Algorithmic has become part of Adobe. So that's kind of interesting. I'm using an older version. I don't know how that's going to change the program as they move forward. I probably would see them doing more integration with Photoshop. That will be very interesting in the long run to see what they do with the program now that Adobe has their hands in it. Not that Adobe does a lot of bad things. They do some great things sometimes. I'm an Adobe ambassador, so they do a lot of great things. A lot of the products are really great. So anyway, back to being able to texture and do all of your shader creation here inside of Substance. The other reason I like to use Substance is that Substance has a plugin for most content creation programs that I use. So they actually have a base plugin already installed in Maya. They have a plugin for Max. They have a plugin for Unreal. And the reason why that is very useful is that you can build a pretty tweaked out shader and have a lot of different parameters that you want to set for that shader here inside of Substance, and then you can take that Substance into Unreal and be able to manipulate that shader inside of Unreal on the fly in real time. So you can have one shader for like grass and be able to do a couple of different parameters and change that up. And I'll show you what I mean when I get started with this. So how do you start a project here inside of Substance? Well, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to come in here and say File, and I'm going to say New Substance. So I'm going to call this Substance, I'm going to make this one my blade, right? So there we are. We're going to make it blade. So let's talk about some of the parameters in here that I'm setting. First of all, I'm making this a PBR, a physical based metallic roughness. So this is going to be based off of metallic and roughness for a physical based shader. You can also make physical based shaders that are based off of specularity and glossiness. You can also do scan processing if you're going to be bringing in information. You can do panoramas. You can make a standard texture, which is what this program started out being able to make, was a standard shader texture. You also have paint filters that you can use inside of Substance Painter. So, but for us, we're going to be just using this metalness, or actually metallic, and roughness. So I'm naming this one Blade, and size is going to be absolute. I'm not going to do 4K for this. I'm going to do this down to 2K. So I'm going to set this square, so 2K to 2K, and then everything else is going to be relative to the parent. And we're going to hit OK. And you see I have a brand new unsaved package, and I have a Blade shader in here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of other graphs. So I'm going to go ahead and make a graph for the guard and hit OK. And I'm going to also make a graph for the handle. And I'm also going to make one more for, trying to think. So I've got the blade, the guard, the handle, and the pommel. So I've got all of my graphs in here that I'm going to make, and I'm going to rename this one just so this can keep the same type of nomenclature and keep that capital as well, like the rest of them. So I've got these already in there. I'm going to save my package. So I'm going to save this as, and let's just call this Helo-Sword. So there we go, Helo-Sword. I know it's sword. I know it's sword. Anyway. So what I want to be able to do is it's great having this cube in here, but this cube is not very useful because I would rather see my model in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and come to my package, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say link, and I'm going to link 3D mesh. So I'm going to go get my 3D mesh, which is this UV Blade FBX file, and open it. And you see it makes a brand new folder called resources. So it makes this folder because this is not something that is internal to this shader. So when I export this shader out to use in another program, it's not going to take this mesh with it. It's only going to link this as a resource, right? So I can drag this into my 3D view, and you'll see, boom, it shows up my sword. My sword is showing in there instead of the cube now. Now, if you like that environment being back there, you can come in here and go to environment and go edit, and I'll say, you know, true. I kind of like the environment sometimes to show. I don't know why. I guess so I don't feel alone. You can turn that dome, so you'll see that you can turn that dome in here. You can change the exposure of your background. The other thing in here that you have are lights. So I can go here and say edit and go my lights. And if I want to, I can turn on some lights. Because right now I don't have, I think I have a light, but I don't, oh, that's my ambient light. Let's turn that off. So let's add a point light. So it's a point light. Let's make this like a bluish. So you can kind of see, yeah, there you go. So if you hold down the shift key, when you move inside of the viewport, you'll actually move the light around and not the model. So, you know, maybe we probably want to change the color so we can see a little bit better, right? So, got like this red coming from this angle. Just some more. Just another highlight in here, right? That's all it is, just another highlight. So what's really cool is that I broke these guys up as you saw inside of Silo, they were separate objects. And so the model comes in as one piece, but if I take this blade shader or this blade graph and drag it over here and drop it on here, this happens because of Silo. Silo has a default texture shader, and it always keeps a default. So even though inside of Silo I made this blade, the name still comes out as default. It's fine. So I can come in here and say default and drop it onto this piece, and you'll see, boom, it gives me that shader for that piece. Now I'm going to do something in here so we can separate these shaders and know what we're looking at. I'm going to come here to my graph area. So this is my graph in here where I build my graph out. And if you've used other node-based texturing programs, then Substance Designer doesn't look very much different. So I'm going to come in here and you'll see the CLR, which is color. I'm going to drag that down. And I'm going to change that color. So I'm going to click that color. I'm going to change this. Let's do something like that. And I'm going to connect that color to, you'll see there's a base color, a normal map, a roughness map, and a metallic. These are the outputs, and it also gives you a height map. We're probably not going to use the height map. Maybe. So I'm going to drag this color to this and connect these two. So that should be my output color now. So let's make sure, let's make this something just different. So we should, oh, I see what's happening. We're looking at the pommel. So let's double click and go to my blade. There we go. So here inside of my blade, let's make this like the cyan looking color and drop it on there. I just wanted to do that so you could see, if you look at this, you can see that yes, it actually does change that shader. And so we can do this for all of these. So let's do one for the guard. So double click on guard, go here to color. Let's change this to this like, and let's make sure we drag this over to our guard. We're going to drop it on guard. And then handle, let's double click on handle. Let's do it again, color. Drag this. I'm just going to leave this black and drop this on the handle. And then we got one more for pommel. I think we already changed the pommel color, so I'm just going to drag this on there for the pommel. So you'll see we've got different colors coming through on our model, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to go back here to blade. Let's work on this blade texture first. So we brought that color in there just to be a placeholder. We're not going to use it in the end. So the power of Substance Designer comes in with its generators. So you have noise generators and you have pattern generators. So if I look in here underneath patterns, I'm going to look for, let's look for something that I can, let's see. We can always change it. Let's just put something on here just to start out with though. Let's do like a fractal sum. So I'm going to drag this in here and drop it. And I'm going to add in, you'll see this NRM, so normal. Now you can also get to this list of things by just hitting the space bar. If you just hit space bar in here, you'll see all of these items show up in here. So normal, bitmap, uniform color, all those show up in there. So you can either do it here or hit space bar and get them from here. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to come in here with this. What did we grab? We grabbed a fractal sum. So I'm going to get a normal node. And you'll notice something about these nodes as I drag these nodes in there. You'll see that some nodes have a gray dot and some nodes have a yellow dot, and then some nodes have a yellow or gray dot. That means that this will accept a grayscale or a color image. This only outputs color, and it only takes an input of grayscale. So I can drag this grayscale in there and take it in there, and you can see it's generated our normal map based off of that fractal. So I can now take that fractal and input that into my normal output node, and you'll see, boom, my blade turns into this kind of crumpled up mess. So I'm going to come here to my normal, I'm going to double click on my normal map, and you'll see that my specific parameters in here for intensity, I can turn down the intensity of my normal, which is very useful. Because we want to just have it like it's like a little bit of, you know, change to the surface. We don't want it to be crazy nuts over the top. So maybe we'll even go smaller, but you can double click on this and type in a value. So I'm going to do 0.2. Right. And I even think that's still too much. So 0.1. Let's do 0.02. There we go. That actually looks good. So I've got this going into my normal. But what's cool is I can also take this and drop this into my roughness. So now you can see the roughness of my model. Right? You can see where it's glossy in some places and kind of rough in others. The other thing that I can do, I'm going to use a BLD, which is a blend, and I'm going to take my color and I'm going to take this as opacity. So you'll see you got this right here as opacity, and this is going in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this over to my metallic. Right, and right now it's like, well, nothing, it looks exactly the same, doctor. So doctor, it looks exactly the same. So what I'm going to do to my node is I'm going to come right here and get an HSL, which is hue, saturation, and lightness, and drop that in between those two. So what I can do with this is I can change the saturation of that color. Right, I can even change the hue of that color. I can change the lightness of that color. All right, so I can start to manipulate and play with some of those things, which is pretty cool. Now I could also do the same thing by just doing it this way. I could just drag this guy in there and then drop an HSL. Well, actually we want to do that. We want to drop a levels. If I drop a level in here and it didn't drop between them, now it is. So with the level, you can see I can change this level, and as I change that, you can see that looks like, you know, at certain angles you can see the real metalness of my object. Like, it looks like it's starting to react like a metal would react, right? Which is pretty cool. Now I can do the same thing here for roughness. Let's say we don't want it to be so rough. I'm going to get another level, drop that in here, and connect that up. I'm just left mouse clicking to connect this up. So let's get rid of this. And let's just keep this. Right. So keep it like this. I just like having them clean. I didn't want to do that. Let's undo that. So for this levels here, I can play with the roughness of my object, and that will change how rough it actually shows for me. So I could do this closer to white. Right. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to change this color. Actually, let's do this. Let's add another blend in here. Take the color from this and let's get another hue saturation and input that color into this, and then output that into the other slot. And then let's take the output from the two of these and put it here. So the way that this works, this blend node works just kind of like the layers inside of Photoshop work. So as you can see, I've got a blending mode. I'm going to change that blending mode to, let's say, multiply. And I'm going to change the saturation, and let's say the hue. Let's change the hue. Let's maybe desaturate it a little bit. So this blending mode is how that's being really worked, right? Working those two together. So I could do something like minimum, I could do subtract, right? So I'm really getting that color to come from the subtraction of those guys. Now the cool thing is that I could also add in another fractal here. So boom, and then drop that on there. And now you'll see those two colors are being mixed based off of, you know, this fractal, right? So if I wanted to, I could actually have, let's not use the fractal. Let's use this grunge map. So let's delete the fractal and grab this grunge map. So you can see now, like, I can have like these huge spots that show up all over my model. Now I shifted the hue and saturation and everything away from that. I'm going to come in here and say reset, and I'm going to come in here and say reset. So now they're actually the color that they were. So if I wanted to really change this, I would change this color and leave the other one where it is. Right, so pretty much almost black. And I'll take this and bring some more lightness into it because it is black. And boom. There we go. All right, so I've got this kind of roughness everywhere. Now I don't have to use this for roughness. I could easily go back in here and get something like this and then pump that into my roughness. Right? So I'm trying to see what's happening here. There we go. Let's get that better in range. So is that computing? I don't think that's computing. Let's actually delete this guy out. When you see the broken line like that, it's not computing that value into your shader. So you have to, sometimes you'll have to, you know, change that. To get it the way that you want it. And maybe I'll even do that for my metallic here. All right. And maybe we will and it looks cool. Doesn't look bad. So I mean, it's the start of our shader, right? So for most of our blade, we want it to be like this. We want it to be like this kind of really rough black with a little bit of shine to it in places. And then this leading edge right here, we want this to be where our sharpened edge is at. So I do need to make another shader then. So I need to make another shader. Let's call this blade edge. So this blade edge, I'm going to use this to make another shader for the edge of my blade. So I'm just going to drop this onto the default for right now, so we can figure out what we want this to kind of look like. And I need like lines, right? I need that look like the sharpened edge of a knife. See if these wood fibers will work. Let's just see, right? Let's just see. And I'm gonna go get a color. And I'm just gonna get like I'm gonna go grayscale just so I can get a gray silver type of color. So boom. Let's drop this on there. Oh, I need to make sure I drop that node and then that node. Yeah, if you just drop grayscale into your normal slot, it doesn't process correctly and it comes out looking like semi-transparent and things like that, which is not what we want. So looking at this, that's kind of what I want. But I would like, I wonder if there is, no, that's vertical noise. I want like a ramp. You can also search in here. So I'm looking for, and there is not really a ramp. I mean, I know how to make something that does what I want, but I was trying to cheat. I was trying to do the simple way out. And as they say, there's no easy way out. I'm gonna grab this shape. So this is a pattern, and in here I can grab a shape. What's cool about this is I have a pattern. I can do disk. I can do, waves. I can also do gradation. So I have a gradation in there. I can change the scale of my gradation, size of it. I can turn it 45 degrees. I can turn on tiling if I want to. And I can do like fade it out if I want to. So the reason why I'm looking at using this is because if I take my blend and put this on bottom, put this on top, let's double click on my blend node so we can see it. So the blend right now is just doing a copy. I'm gonna change that and do like a linear dodge on it, maybe. Let's do a subtract on it. Let's see what that looks like. That looks it's getting there. It's getting to what I want it to be. It's getting there. I think that this might be too intense. Let's take that down a couple notches. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I really want this to kind of smooth from here and smooth, out. So what I think I need to do is to rotate this. So I have a TRS transform node. I'm going to drop that on there. So now I've got the 2D transform node. So I can rotate this 90 degrees. So now you'll see I get it straight up and down on this. So that's really what I wanted it to look like. So if I do black all the way, actually what this should be done is 180. Alright, so then, no, I think I had it right the first time. I don't know what I'm thinking about. I don't know what I'm thinking. Yeah, you could do, I don't want to do any of that. I want to reset this. And let's go back here to our actual gradient. And do that from here. I still think I want to flip this for some reason. And I don't know why. Why do I want to flip it? I don't know. Let's go back to gradient. Yeah, that's not what I want because it's really not doing. It's really not doing what I want it to. That's really what I wanted to do right there. But then I want it to kind of start from this area here and move down. So maybe what we'll do is we'll put another transform here. Let's keep this cleaned up, trying to make sure you can all see. The cool thing about this is we can test this out. If it doesn't work the way we want it, we can always get rid of it. So tiling, I'm going to turn off tiling. I don't want tiling. So what am I thinking about? No tiling. So no, because that's yeah. So let's see if we move this. Yeah, that's actually what I'm looking to do. So you can see this is actually realistically doing what I wanted to do. So let me move this down. Because in the end, I'm going to actually generate a mask. And you won't even see. You won't even see a lot of this. Let's pull this down. Down, something like that. This line back up. I don't want tiling on this. No, that's not what I wanted to change. And I'm trying to remember. I thought there was a way. Is that it? Yeah, I thought there was a way to actually be able to change and not have tiling turned on, but I must be wrong. God dang it. I thought there was a way to be able to turn off tiling. It's not that. It's not that. It's absolute. Oh, there it is. Absolute. My bad. So I can have no tiling. So that way it won't keep tiling as I move this. You'll see, now you can see that it doesn't tile over the model. Alright, and I still think that's too much, so I'm gonna And it kind of looks like plastic right now. It does not look like metal. And it looks like plastic because it's really, really super shiny. So let's get a noise. Let's get something in there. To control most of this. Let's just duplicate this. Let's see something. Let's try something here. Oh yeah, that's kind of what I was looking to be able to do. And it almost did it perfectly, right? So it's got that shininess to it. It's got that old shininess. Oh, don't fall apart on me. What are you doing? What are you doing? Is that no? I want my angle to be 90. Or more so negative 90. That's what I want. And I also want this not to be one color. I actually, you know what we're going to do? We're going to use, this gradient's going to come in handy. We're going to take this guy and drop it on this. And we can change that pattern. So now we got like a sharp, and then we also want to change the metallic. Now I think we're probably going to want to take this guy and maybe run that into the metallic. But if we do that, we want to do some levels on this guy. So with the levels, we can adjust that down. I don't want to get it that close, right? We can adjust that down. We could even flip that, right? We could flip it the other way. And I think that's kind of getting there. I think that's kind of what I want for my edge. And I've kind of got my blade worked out. I kind of got my edge worked out. Kind of. What I want to do though is I want to bake. So let's come in here and right click on my model. I'm going to say bake model information. And I want to do some bakes on this. So you can actually bake your model. So I'm going to, and I'm gonna do this based off of select by the meshes. So I'm not gonna bake these guys, and I'm going to bake the blade, and I'm gonna bake this as let's do it as a TIFF. And what I'm going to bake, I'm going to add a baker, and I'm going to bake, let's do a color map from mesh. And let's do a convert UV to SVG. And let's also do a curvature map from mesh. Right, and let's say render selected bakers. and save that baking setup. Right? So if I close this, you'll see now I have some brand new things in here. So this is the mesh from color, which I don't think it actually, it didn't bake out anything. But my UV convert worked. So you can see there are my pieces of my UV, and then I also got a curvature map. So the curvature map shows me the curvature of my model, where my model curves at. So that's actually really good for edging and things of that nature. So with this UV, what I'll be able to do is mask off where I want a texture to appear at, right? So what ends up happening in the end, I've got all of these graphs. So let's kind of talk about how this actually comes together. I have all of these graphs, and I'm going to save that. And I'm going to do one new substance. And this is going to be sword. And the reason why this one's going to be sword is when I place this in here, it's going to be, let's just do this real quick. So now if I take my blade and drag this in here, and I take my sword edge and drag that in here, you'll see now these are compiled shaders. These are compiled materials. So these want to, as you can see, it wants to connect to everything. But I don't want it to connect to everything. I want it to connect to what I want it to, right? So let's make sure that it's only, and there's a way to make sure it's only connecting to what you want. And there's all our materials. So the reason why this is actually useful is that there are actually shaders in here. So there are, where are my shaders at? There are actually shaders in here that let me, right, take all of this stuff out, right? So I can actually do, and there's one in here for masking. So that's just, so these are like compiled nodes, but there's one. Is this it? Let's see. No, there's supposed to be one for all of my, for multi-sub objects. And is this it? There we go. Multi-material blend. Right. So the cool thing about this is I can come in here and you'll see I have like a diffuse 2. I can just do like the base color. So this is my base color coming from here. And there's my normal. There's my roughness, my metallic. So what this does is it basically takes all of these and brings them together into one material. Like that. So now I've got a multi-sub. I've got 2 materials basically working on this. look at this node. And that's that guy. I need it's not the switch. Man, I haven't been in here in a minute. This is my material selector. And I believe let's see, I think there's a mask. And let's get this guy. And yeah, let's look at this guy, double click and look at him, and then click on color from mask, and then click the color picker, and then I can click on the color that I want to select. So this mask should now, there, you can see it generated me a mask. All right, I think that I'm able to do it that way. Or you can do a color ID. I believe you can do that as well. So if I were to come in here and grab my SVG, and that's why I kept recording, because I have to remember sometimes the doctor's getting old. And if I come in here, yep, and if I look at this material, excuse me, can have an ID. So I'm gonna click on my map, double click on that guy, and then click back on my multi-sub object, and that should, there we go, it loads up the properties. I'm going to come down here to material 2, and I'm going to choose, it's the wrong one, I'm going to choose this guy for that material, and there it is, ha 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 ha. And then I'm going to go close up material 2, and actually that should be it. These should be reversed, my bad. And I'll tell you why they should be reversed, because it makes one shader the base shader of everything, and then the other shader is when you choose that multi-sub, that's what makes the second shader. So boom. And no, I think I had it right. What am I doing? Because this is, it's hard, right? Because this is material 1. This is my blade. This should be material 1, which it is. Get that out of the way. We don't need this. And then this should be material 2. So we'll drag this to material 2. So boom, there it is. And so both of my materials, or both of my shaders rather, are on here based off of my color mapping. So now I should be able to go back and go to my blade shader and change the color of this. Yep, there it goes. should be able to turn up the normal map of this. Yeah, oh, there it goes. Takes a second to process because it has to process that other graph and then process this. And then my sword edge, if I go to that, I should be able to now turn up its normal map to know that it is actually working. And it is. And you can see I've got two textures onto this object. Not two good looking textures yet, but two textures. And I'm probably going to remove this for something else. I don't really like that. I don't really like that. Dr. Cunningham does not like that. That does not please me. Let's try this guy. And delete that. And let's change saturation, maybe. Let's go to like a blue, something bluish in hue. It's more purple. It's like cyan. Something like there. And then let's bring the saturation really, really low. Well, actually that's saturated, and turn the lightness down. So now we have something that's not as generic looking. And we can even bring that normal map back down. I think it's a little bit too bumpy. And this roughness here, I don't think this is good enough for my roughness. I'm gonna block that out for a minute, like kablam. Let's get something else. Let's get like this. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. I'm liking it so much. Let's get rid of this. Now there also is a clean function in here. If you go here, you can say clean. And when you do clean, any nodes that are not being used in here, it'll just delete them, which is very handy when it comes down to it. Oh man, that's some sexiness right there is what that is. We gotta work on our, on the edge now. So let's work on the edge. I know you weren't betting on me. You were like, oh man, Dr. Cunningham don't know what he's doing. But I'm telling you, I still got some moves that I do. And let's actually just pump this into our metallic as well. But in our metallic, let's pump it in and put levels on top of it. Yeah, yes. But let's definitely bring those normals down. Those normals are way too high. Bring those normals up just a tiny bit, just a smidge, just a smidge. That is some sexiness going on right there, is what that is. That's some downright sexiness right there. Ooh boy, I like that. I like it a lot. Now, what's cool is with the sword, with this sword shader, you can no, don't do that. You can basically drop it on everything, right? You could come in here and drop this on every part of your model, and then come back to that multi blend node that we added in here. It's getting kind of laggy because there's a lot going on. Let's turn down channel so you can see now I have a material 2, but you could do a material 3, right, and 4, and everything else. And what you would do is for each of the additional materials, you would come in here and go to color and choose its color out of the SVG, right? So what you would need is an SVG with everything on it. So I can come back in here and go back to my bakers. So let's go bake model information. And for this baker, we're gonna go to submesh and we're gonna bake everything. And I'm only gonna do, now I'm gonna do curvature maps too. So I'm gonna say render selected bakers. It'll go through, compute it, boop, 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 doop, 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 and boom. And you can close this. And now you have a bake of your UVs, and it has all of your UVs in it, right? So you have all of the pieces of your UV in here, which is pretty cool. Now the only problem that this has is that as some of these pieces, like this is the same piece right here, but these are separate pieces which are actually still a part of the same piece. You could get around that. You could take this file. This file, it can be exported. You could show this file in your Explorer, and you could take this file into something, because this is a SVG file. You could take this into Illustrator and make all of the pieces that you want to be the same color. That way when you selected them, it would all be the same color for those pieces, right? So if that makes sense. That's kind of the only way around that issue. And it's not really an issue, it's just hindsight is 2020, right? So you could bake these by material. So the way that I did this before, I baked these by model. I could bake them by material. One thing I would have to do, I would need to go back into Silo here, and I would need to make a new and have another blade, right? So I can come in here and select by, so I can come in here and grab this guy. Is he frozen? Oh, it's frozen. Okay. It was thinking. And I can apply this material to it. And we're gonna call this, we're gonna rename this. This is gonna be default. And this one's gonna be blade. And to make sure that I have blade on here, I'm just gonna change this color to something kooky. Hold on. Okay, I was like, I think I subdivided it. That's fine. So I'm gonna file and I'm gonna save as, and say this is an F box, and let's leave it as scene right now, because I want to show what this will do differently. So back in here inside of Substance, I'm gonna import a link to a 3D mesh, and let's just say that I use scene and open it. So from this one, I'm going to go in here and go to bake model information. So yeah, so now you see those are my materials. It's going to be based off material. I don't know why I didn't save that name. That's just weird. And I'm going to add Baker, and I'm going to do another SVG and render this guy. And what's different is you'll see everything that's a part of the same shader actually gets the same color. So between these two, so you'll see that some things changed out in color, some things are now exactly the same color because they are they're the same UV, right? You could, like I say, alternatively, you could just take this file inside of you could alternatively take your UV file inside of Photoshop and just put the same colors on top of the pieces of the UV that you want it to be. So it's not like this is like magic or anything. This is just basically using the UVs of your model and just assigning random color to each UV island. So it's not like it's magic. It's just, it's just doing each UV island, right? So that way, that makes it make a little bit more sense, honestly. So anywho, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, even though it was a little bit long. I hope that you spend some time and get inside of Substance Designer on your own and play with the values in here. Substance Designer is really powerful. Like I say, a lot of people kind of lean more towards Substance Painter, but Substance Designer is the granddaddy. It's you wouldn't have Substance Painter if you didn't have Substance Designer, and Substance Designer is pretty fantastic in my opinion. So hopefully you got something out of this video, and if you did, leave a like, and if you enjoy the content that we put out here on the channel, then make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you can get the updates whenever we start posting, because I have a lot of things that are coming up posting. We are actually going to start another channel that is dedicated to home automation. I know you're like, Dr. Media, man, you're all over the place. You're doing like home automation, you're doing digital content creation. I like a lot of things. I like a lot of things, and I have a lot of time down when I'm not working. So I keep investing in more and more things. And we even have on this channel, I know I've been promising it for a while, but we've got a stockpile of parts, and we're going to probably do 2 Threadripper and 3 Ryzen builds this summer. So the Ryzen builds are definitely the Threadripper builds are definitely gonna happen. I recently just got a hold of a 1950X and a 1920X, and I know you might be thinking, well, those are first generation Threadripper processors, and it's like, yeah, but they are still pretty beastly, and I don't feel like paying the over $2,000 for second series Threadripper when there's not really a huge amount of value there for me as a content creator. Now, if you're using those processors to play games, which I don't know why you would, because Threadripper is realistically meant for content creation, there's some improvement for gaming in the second generation of Threadripper, but I don't really care about that. I've got Ryzen 7s. That's what the Ryzen 7 and the Ryzen 5s that I have are for gaming. And I've got 2 of those that are just sitting in boxes waiting to be installed into a system. So I've got 1 system rebuild. I've got 3 system builds and 1 system rebuild. So the rebuild is going to be one that I did probably a year and a half ago, which was a Ryzen 5. It's going to be upgraded to a Ryzen 7 1700X. Now, some people might be like, well, 1800X is like, 1700X is it's minimal for the first generation Ryzen, and they're so cheap right now. Like first generation Ryzen 1700Xs are like 150 at Micro Center. I have to stop myself. I'm gonna keep buying them. Don't know why. Anyway, until next time, I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said before, hit that like button if you liked it. Subscribe if you think you like the content on this channel. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you can find out when we're posting new things on the channel. Until next time, my digital mutants. Peace.